The marketplace on Zarnath Prime was always noisy, but today it felt like the whole planet was breathing down Mark's neck. He had been wandering through rows of alien stalls, each selling strange, shimmering foods, but his own snack was simple too. Paper cups filled with golden fries from the only human food stand in the sector. It was the only thing keeping him calm in this chaotic city. He wasn't expecting trouble, not in broad daylight. But trouble had a way of finding him. It started with a shadow falling across his path, a large and moving one. Mark looked up and saw her blue fur shimmering under the sun, tall and lean, her eyes a sharp amber that scanned him like a predator sizing up prey. Her ears twitched, her tail swished, and she stepped close enough for him to see the tiny scars running along. Her leather armor straps. She didn't speak at first. She just stared at the fries in his hand. He froze, unsure whether to run or say something. Her pupils narrowed to slits as she leaned forward, sniffing the air between them. Her voice was low, carrying a strange purr beneath the words. "What is that smell?" she asked. Mark hesitated. "Fries, just potatoes, oil, salt." Her gaze stayed locked on the food like it was some kind of treasure. Without asking, she reached out with clawed fingers and plucked one from the cup. He could have stopped her, but something in the way her eyes widened at the first bite made him pause. She chewed slowly, and for a moment her fierce posture softened. Then she swallowed, and something changed in her expression. Something sharp, dangerous. She took another fry, then another, moving closer until their shoulders almost touched. People in the crowd slowed down to watch. A few aliens muttered in their own tongues, giving Mark uneasy glances. He didn't know it yet, but sharing food in her culture wasn't just a casual gesture, it was a claim. "More," she said. Not asked, demanded. Mark handed her the second cup, unsure if refusing would be a good idea. She ate like she'd been starving for days, but her eyes never left the crowd. Every time someone looked their way for too long, a low growl rumbled from her throat. It was subtle at first, but the more fries she ate, the more aggressive it became. Two tall reptilian merchants passed nearby, their heads turning toward Mark. She stepped in front of him so quickly he barely saw her move. Her ears flattened, lips pulling back to reveal gleaming fangs. The merchants backed off without a word. Mark's voice was low. You okay?" Her answer was a short, sharp nod. They were too close. "To me?" Her tail flicked once. "To what is mine?" He almost choked on his fry. "Yours?" Her eyes narrowed like she couldn't believe he didn't understand. "You shared food. That means protection. That means I guard you until danger is gone." Mark wasn't sure how to respond to that. He glanced around and noticed the market's energy had shifted. People were giving them space now. The chatter was quieter when they passed. He couldn't decide if he felt safer or more exposed. They kept walking, her keeping just half a step ahead of him, scanning every corner. At one point, a group of armored aliens blocked the main road. They were bigger than she was, their faces hidden behind masks. The leader tilted his head toward Mark, then took a step forward. She didn't hesitate. A roar tore from her throat, echoing off the stone walls. It was a sound that made Mark's chest vibrate and his skin prickle. The group froze, their posture tense. The leader muttered something and stepped aside, letting them pass. Mark could feel his heartbeat in his ears. "You didn't have to do that," he said quietly. She glanced at him, the growl fading. "Yes, I did." The way she said it left no room for argument. They turned into a quieter street, the smell of strange spices and hot metal in the air. She slowed, glancing around as if making sure they weren't being followed. "What's your name?" he asked finally. Her eyes softened just slightly. "Syrah," he repeated it awkwardly. "Syrah." Her ears twitched. "You say it wrong, but it is close enough." They walked in silence for a while, the market noise fading behind them. Mark realized that every time someone came within a few meters, her hand drifted toward the curved blade at her hip. Not in fear, just ready. When they reached the plaza, she stopped and turned to him. "You will not walk alone here," she said. "Not after this." Mark frowned. "After what?" She leaned closer, her eyes locking on his. "After you gave me the taste of your world." Mark didn't know whether to laugh or worry. The way Sierra spoke, it sounded less like a promise and more like an order. The plaza around them was busy, filled with aliens from half a dozen worlds. Some were selling goods, others haggling over prices, but many threw quick glances toward the blue-furred warrior at his side. And then they quickly looked away. Her presence was like a barrier. It was strange Mark had never been ignored so thoroughly, and yet felt so targeted at the same time. Every step he took, Sierra stayed just close enough to brush his shoulder. Her eyes scanned everything, catching every movement, every possible threat. "Do you always protect people you just met?" he asked quietly. "Not people," she said. "You." Mark blinked. "And what makes me different?" "You gave me something rare," she replied without looking at him. "Something I have never tasted." He smirked. "Fries?" Her ears twitched. "It is more than food. In my clan, sharing your meal means sharing your fate. If you fall, I fall. If you fight, I fight." That made Mark pause. He didn't remember agreeing to that. "What if I don't want you to get hurt because of me?" Her sharp gaze flicked to him. "Then do not walk into danger. I will make sure of it." They moved deeper into the city, away from the market and toward the spaceport district. Tall metallic towers rose around them, casting long shadows over the streets. Mark had come here to meet a trader about ship parts, but he was starting to think this trip had turned into something else entirely. A low hum filled the air as a hovercraft drifted overhead. Sierra's tail stiffened, and her hand brushed her weapon again. She led him toward a narrow alley, pressing him close to the wall as a group of armored figures appeared at the far end. Their movements were too deliberate to be casual. Mark whispered, "Do you know them?" "They are hunters," she said. Her tone had no fear, only calculation. Not for animals, for people. The group advanced slowly, scanning the alley. When their eyes landed on Mark, their leader tilted his head in recognition. "Human," the alien hissed in a guttural voice. "You're worth something." Before Mark could answer, Sierra stepped forward, her stance low, her claws glinting in the dim light. "He is mine," she growled. The hunters stopped. They looked at her, then at each other. One of them chuckled. "You would fight for him?" "I would kill for him," she replied without hesitation. Mark's pulse quickened. He wasn't sure if she was bluffing. But then she bared her fangs, and the sound that came from her throat was deep and primal, enough to make even the air feel heavy. The hunters hesitated, their confidence flickering. The leader raised a hand, signaling them to back off. "Not worth the trouble," he muttered. They turned and disappeared into the shadows. Sierra didn't relax right away. She stood still for a moment, listening, her ears twitching at every sound. Only when she was sure they were gone did she turn back to Mark. "You should not be here alone," she said again. Mark tried to smile. "I guess that's not a problem anymore." Her tail flicked once, like she approved. "No, now you will go where I go." He raised an eyebrow. "Is that an invitation or a command?" She didn't answer, just started walking, expecting him to follow. And somehow he did. As they moved through the winding streets, Mark realized the whole encounter had drawn attention. Whispers followed them, and every alien who met Sierra's gaze quickly looked away. There was a weight in the air now, an unspoken message this human was not to be touched. They reached a small open courtyard filled with glowing plants that pulsed softly in the evening light. Sierra stopped there, turning to face him. "If you travel with me, you will be safe," she said. "But safety comes with a price." Mark crossed his arms. "What kind of price?" Her eyes glinted. Loyalty. Mark didn't answer right away. The courtyard was quiet except for the soft hum of the glowing plants, their light reflecting in Syrah's golden eyes. He wasn't sure if she was testing him or if she truly expected an answer. Loyalty works both ways, he said finally. Her ears twitched at that. I know, and you'll protect me? I already have, she replied. And I will again. Mark nodded slowly. Then I'll stick with you. Her gaze lingered on him for a moment, as if weighing his words. Then she gave a small, sharp nod and turned toward a narrow path leading deeper into the city. Come, we should not stay in one place too long. The air was cooler now as they moved through side streets. Lanterns flickered above doorways, and distant engines rumbled from the spaceport. Mark kept glancing at the shadows, half expecting the hunters to reappear. But no one came close, not with Syrah at his side. She stopped suddenly, raising a hand. Hear that? Mark strained his ears. At first, he only caught the faint hum of traffic. Then he heard its footsteps, too many to be casual. They echoed against the metal walls, coming from behind them. Syrah's claws slid out with a faint scrape. Stay close. They turned down another alley, but the footsteps followed, faster now. Mark's pulse raced. Whoever it was, they weren't hiding. Shadow moved ahead. Figures stepped into view, blocking their way. This time it wasn't the hunters from before. It was 3 tall insectoid aliens with long limbs and hard, chitin-covered faces. They carried short, hooked blades that glimmered under the dim light. One of them clicked its mandibles. Hand over the human. Syrah stepped forward, her tail lashing. You can try to take him. The nearest alien tilted its head. We will. They moved quickly, too quickly for Mark to track. But Syrah was faster. She lunged, her claws flashing. As she deflected the first strike, the second attacker swung from behind, but she twisted aside, her elbow slamming into its chest with a sickening crack. Mark backed up against the wall, his hands clenched uselessly. He knew he couldn't fight like her. He could only watch. Third alien rushed in, but Syrah caught its arm and yanked it forward, using its momentum to throw it hard to the ground. She bared her fangs, crouching over it with a growl so deep it made Mark's skin crawl. The other 2 froze, realizing they were outmatched. One hissed something in its native tongue, and they pulled their injured companion away before vanishing. Into the shadows, Syrah didn't move until they were gone. Then she stood, breathing steadily, as if the fight had cost her nothing. Are you hurt? She asked without looking at him. Mark shook his head. No, but I think you scared them. More than you hurt them. Her lips curled into something like a smirk. Good. Fear lasts longer than pain. They continued walking until the noise of the city faded again. This time, they ended up in a quieter district, where the streets were lined with small, dim shops and the smell of cooked food lingered in the air. Mark glanced at her. Do you do this for everyone you share a meal with? Her expression softened, just barely. I have never shared a meal like that before, he frowned. Why? In my world, food is survival. You give it only to family or to someone you claim as your own. Mark stopped in his tracks. So, what exactly does that make me? She turned to face him, her eyes locked on his. It makes you mine. Mark didn't know how to answer her. The way she said mine wasn't playful, it was a statement carved in stone. It wasn't just about protection anymore. It was a claim. They walked in silence, the streets growing narrower as the lights dimmed. The smell of fried spices and strange meats drifted from small stalls, but Syrah didn't stop. She was leading him somewhere, and Mark had no idea where. Eventually, they reached a heavy metal door tucked between 2 crumbling walls. She knocked 3 times in a strange pattern. The door slid open with a hiss, and a tall alien with pale scales peered out. His eyes narrowed at Mark, but he stepped aside to let them in. The room beyond was dim, lit by a few red glowing panels. There were tables, crates, and a large hollow map projected in the center. Several aliens of different species sat around, all armed. They all stopped talking when Sira entered. One of them, a short, broad-shouldered creature with tusks, gave her a nod. "You brought a human." "He is under my guard," Sira replied firmly. The tusked alien grunted. "Then his enemies are ours." Mark felt a strange weight in his chest. He didn't even know these people, yet they spoke like they were ready to fight for him. He leaned closer to Sira and whispered, "Who are they?" "My allies," she said. "And now yours." Before he could ask more, the holomap flickered to show moving red dots across the city. The tusked alien tapped one of the glowing lines. "Hunters are sweeping the lower districts." "They are looking for the human." Mark stiffened. "Me?" "Why?" Sira's tail lashed. "Because you are rare here. And rare things are taken, sold, or killed." The room went quiet. Even the hum of the holomap felt louder in the silence. "We have to move him," another alien said. Sira shook her head. "No, we make them stop looking." The tusked one raised a brow. "How?" Sira's eyes narrowed. "We make them afraid to try." The way she said it sent a shiver down Mark's spine. She wasn't bluffing. Whatever she was planning, it wasn't going to be quiet or subtle. Mark stepped forward. "I don't want anyone hurt because of me." Sira's gaze locked on him. "You already gave me your trust when you shared your food. This is my fight now." The others in the room muttered in agreement. Weapons were checked, armor adjusted. It was like a storm gathering speed. Mark swallowed hard. He had seen fights before, but this felt different. These weren't soldiers following orders, they were predators defending their own. Sira stepped closer, her voice low but firm. "Stay behind me. No matter what you see." The metal door opened again, letting in a rush of cool air. The group moved out into the night, the streets eerily quiet. Mark's pulse thudded in his ears as he followed. Every shadow looking sharper, every noise louder. When they reached the edge of a wide plaza, Sira stopped and raised a hand. Across the open space, a squad of hunters emerged, their armor gleaming under the pale streetlights. They spotted the group immediately and began to spread out. Mark could feel the tension in the air, like the moment before lightning strikes. Sira. Claws slid out with a metallic scrape. She glanced back at him just once, her eyes blazing. "This ends now," she said. The hunters moved forward in a slow, deliberate line. Their armor reflected the pale lights, their boots clicking against the plaza's smooth stone floor. Behind them, shadows stretched long and thin, as if the city itself was holding its breath. Sira didn't wait for them to speak. She stepped into the open, claws out, her tail whipping behind her. "He is under my protection," she called out, her voice carrying across the plaza. "You take one step closer, you do not walk away." The hunter's leader, a towering figure in black plating, tilted his head. "You think you can stop all of us?" "I know I can," she replied. Then it happened, fast, sharp, and violent. The first hunter lunged, but Sira was already moving, a blur of blue fur and steel. Her claws tore across his chest plate, sending him sprawling back with a guttural roar. Two more came from her side, but her allies rushed forward to intercept. The tusked alien slammed into one, knocking him off his feet, while a smaller, lizard-like fighter leapt onto another's back, wrenching at his helmet. Mark stayed where he was, pressed against the shadowed wall, watching in disbelief. Sira fought like she'd been born for this, her movements precise, every strike meant to end a threat quickly. She ducked under a blade, spun, and slammed her elbow into her attacker's jaw. A hunter broke through the chaos and charged toward Mark. He barely had time to raise his arms before Sira appeared between them, her claws digging into the hunter's shoulder. She yanked him away from Mark, tossing him aside like discarded trash. "Stay behind me," she barked, her eyes flashing. Mark's heart pounded. He had never been this close to such raw violence, and yet, knowing she was there, he didn't feel helpless. He felt safe. The hunters began to falter. Every attempt to close in was met with brutal resistance. Syrah's allies fought with fierce coordination, driving them back step by step. The leader growled in frustration, signaling for a retreat. But Syrah wasn't done. She stalked forward, her growl echoing through the plaza. "You hunt again," she warned, "and I will find you." The hunters backed away, disappearing into the shadows. The plaza was silent, except for the heavy breathing of those who had fought. Syrah turned to Mark, scanning him quickly for injuries. "You are unharmed?" He nodded. "Thanks to you." Her tail relaxed slightly, but her eyes stayed sharp. "They will think twice before coming again." The tusked alien stepped forward, resting a heavy hand on Mark's shoulder. "You've got her loyalty now, human. That's worth more than credits in this city." Mark glanced at Syrah, meeting her gaze. For a moment, there was no growl. No sharpness, just a strange warmth in her eyes. But then she looked away, scanning the shadows again. "Come," she said. "We are not finished yet." Mark followed, still feeling the echo of the fight in his chest. He didn't know where she was taking him next, but he knew one thing: walking away from her was no longer an option. They left the plaza quickly, moving through narrow alleys until the sounds of the fight faded behind them. The streets were quiet now, as if the city itself had decided not to interfere. Syrah walked ahead, her shoulders tense, scanning every shadow. Mark caught up to her. "It's over, isn't it?" Her ears flicked back, "For now." But hunters remember. They do not forgive losing. Then what happens next? She stopped in the middle of the street and turned to face him. The glow from a nearby sign lit her fur in shades of gold and blue. "Next, you decide if you walk alone or if you walk with me." Mark hesitated. He had met her only hours ago, yet in that time she had stood between him and death more than once. She had risked herself without asking for anything in return, except his trust. "You don't even know me," he said quietly. Her gaze was steady. "I know enough. You gave me food when you didn't have to. You looked at me without fear. And when others ran, you stayed." He tried to smile. "So that's all it takes to earn your protection?" Her lips curved slightly, not quite a smile, but close. "That's all it takes to become part of my clan." Mark glanced around the silent street. "Then I guess I'm not walking alone." Her tail flicked in approval. "Good, because I wasn't going to let you." They continued on until they reached a quiet rooftop garden above the city. From there, the lights of Zarnith Prime stretched in every direction, 1,000 colors shimmering in the dark. Syrah stood beside him, arms folded, watching the skyline. "This is my territory," she said softly. "Up here, no one comes unless I allow it." Mark looked at her. "So now I'm safe?" Her eyes shifted to him, and for the first time since they met, there was no growl in her voice. "With me, you will always be safe." He didn't answer. He just stood beside her, feeling the strange calm that came with knowing someone was willing to fight the whole galaxy if it meant protecting him. Below them, the city pulsed with life, but up here, the night was still. Syrah stayed close, her presence as steady as the stars above. Whatever dangers waited tomorrow, they would face them together, and if anyone dared to come close, they would hear her growl first.